Started our meeting, and so we thank everyone for coming today.
Oh, there's my husband. What is he doing? Oh my God, the man is just learning how to use it. Let me call him. No, grandson's not there.
City council now, if that's how they're.
He's good now.
Did he get it?
He's got
Okay,
it.
thank you. Jesus. Hey, we're all, give us a break.
Right.
So let's go over to today's agenda. So we would like to start our second meeting, and we're going to go over several things today, about eight items up for discussion. So I just like to start the meeting by saying that there's been a lot of thought process on what this group will be doing, and so I would like us to talk about those things today, and we would also like to look at some subcommittees as well. And so we'll have time to discuss which of those committees you as a member would like to be on, and then we would start to develop, our planning practices for the things that we would like to discuss to help the city of Florida. So with that being said, I'd like to go over roll call. So hand over to you, Sharon.
Okay, Mr. Major?
Here.
Mr. Hudson? Mr. Atkins?
Here.
Mr. Fong?
Here.
Mr. Feltner?
Here.
Ms. Holycroft? Here. Mrs. Johnson? Here. Reverend Keller?
Here.
Ms. Knisley?
Nicely, here.
Nicely, thank you. Yep. Nicely. Mrs. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Silver?
Here. Steve.
Seaver? And Mrs. Brown, I'm present.
So we'd like to go over and approve the minutes from our meeting on July 8th, 2020.
Yeah. Blue.
Okay, so I would like Patrick to discuss our draft operating guidelines.
Sure, I will note as part of the minutes, vote on that or not. It's a work in progress. But included in your minutes, you have a request membership roster, so that has everybody's information. We will be updating our website to have a page that specifically talks about HRC. It will have this information on it as well. It does not have addresses, so we'll leave those on. Regarding the operating guidelines, we had introduced this a couple of weeks ago as just some guidelines that we used in one other ongoing committee that we have known as the ATP. And so what I wanted to do is briefly go through and see what people think. And then if there's no issues with it, then Mr. Chair, maybe you would want to take a vote and whatever's amended. First page under the articles, go article by article, article 1 name, that's pretty well set. Duties and purpose are right out of chapter 135. Members, article 3, article 4, the officers, please interrupt me if you have questions if you don't want. If I go too quickly. The officers we have elected, we did have in paragraph 2 that each officer would be in place for 2 consecutive years. Feeling that 1 year might not get momentum as the chair as the officers. So seeing a lot of head nods, so I'll take that as a yes.
So the ones that say 1 year now are now 2 years.
What this is knowing that this is startup, there are going to be some that are going to overlap with the next term. So the assumption would be that prior to anything that happened, that they would be reassigned, re-up. But once we get into everybody having overlapping 3-year terms. Did you get that? Under the meetings, we are asking, let's see, by the third meeting then, the idea of each year, the HRC would develop their list of initiatives for the year. We're kind of on track. We're in the second meeting talking about the committees, so maybe by the third meeting. And these are guidelines. Doesn't mean we're going to hit every one of them at the exact time we say on the guidelines, but they're goals. They're the last paragraph on which is known as page 2 of 4. The chairperson notifies the members 1 week prior to the meetings. Yeah, we're still kind of getting our groove on this, and that is the goal to have the agenda out, the agenda packet out at least a week in advance. Once we get set and we get some standard agendas, then that will become easier to do. Committees, as the chair mentioned, hopefully those will be, we'll get some idea on interest and breakdown of the committees. And then amendments are just as you, like any good document, it's a living document and can change over time. And so Article 8 talks about how you would do that. It is a democracy, so it's the commission's will. Any questions about the guidelines? Anything you'd like to see different or
Is everyone comfortable with the in presence and attendance language?
actually language that is suggested by our law director because we are a public meeting?
No, I understand. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. So you have to be here to be in attendance.
Right. And the vote.
And the vote.
So Zoom does not count. Zoom does while we're in the emergency. Okay. So Trey could get here, you wanted to Zoom in, just like he's here. Okay.
So is that language in this draft?
No, because it only happens when an emergency comes up, and an emergency trumps everything else. So it just supersedes this language anyway.
Under Article 2 on my close down. Under Article 2, letter F, it's the last paragraph. I had a little bit of trouble with the wording on that. The word persuasion and the work that we have to do, I don't think is a good word. We're not trying to persuade. That sounds a little wishy-washy. Yeah, and induce. So I would propose an amendment if that would be okay to that paragraph.
Just to point out that that's language that's right out of the ordinance, chapter 135. So if you wanted to clarify that language by.
Yeah. I think we could do better. I think we could do better. And what I would propose would be work with public, private, governmental employees, labor and professional organizations, and employment agencies through education and training to institute non-discriminatory practices in employment, union memberships, promotions, wages, working conditions, layoffs, job opportunities, and housing and public accommodation. So I'm not changing, I don't think, the meaning of the statement, but I think it's using some friendlier words for our work.
I agree.
So basically, you're striking endeavoring by persuasion and education to induce, and saying, work with public, private, governmental employees.
Yeah, and then I'm adding back through education and training, right before to institute non-discriminatory.
Through education, like that.
More intentional to why we're here.
And to institute non-discriminatory practices.
Yeah, the rest of it's the same. Yeah, yeah.
You sign.
Probably in a motion to amend it, right?
Yep. So.
That is-
I second it.
Second.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Yeah, I was getting.
Are there any opposed? This guy's my first time being chair.
You're doing a great job.
Okay, so that was amending that language as far as achieving the overall guidelines. Are there any other suggestions, questions, clarifications that are requested? If not, it would be appropriate for a motion to approve it as amended.
I'll move to approve it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Funny, you know that?
I'm sorry,
Will you-
Secretary Sherry.
oh, Sherry.
Sherry, she got you. But I'll try to remember
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about. So, the first is to study the problems of intergroup relationships, including but not limited to those relationships which involve age, race, and physical or mental handicaps, poverty, or sex as a basis for distinction within the city, and advise and cooperate with the mayor, council, city and safety director, and all other agencies, boards, and officials with respect to any such action. So that is first section. Second, or would be to enlist. To enlist the cooperation of all the racial, religious, ethnic, educational communities, civic, labor, fraternal, and benevolent groups, associations, and societies, and all constructive community forces and powers that are necessary to combat misunderstanding, prejudice, intolerance, and bigotry in intergroup relationships. Third, to incorporate federal, state, and local agencies, the Board of Education, and the parochial schools, and formulating and developing courses of education to combat misunderstandings and prejudice, intolerance, and bigotry and intergroup relationships, to receive and investigate complaints, including following categories: age discrimination, handicap discrimination, poverty discrimination, and racial and sexual, to initiate and conduct surveys concerning the foregoing categories, to confer with any and all groups, hold hearings, make investigations, and assemble pertinent data concerning the foregoing categories. Last, to endeavor by persuasion and education, which we may want to strike that word as well, to induce public and private employers, labor, and professional organizations and employment agencies to institute non-discriminatory practices in employment, union memberships, promotion, wages, working conditions, layoffs, job opportunities, housing, and public accommodation. Does anybody have any questions regarding the duties of the Human Relations Committee at this moment? Any of those? I'm sure, John, you would like to strike the language in section E, is that correct?
It would match up if we would just say, endeavor by education and training, that would match up with the,
I put a note to use the guideline language and just match it up.
okay, yeah.
So number D, when it talks about to receive and investigate complaints, is that where, like, if there are complaints of police brutality or anything in that, does that allow us to do that under there?
Yeah,
Or
I
do we
believe
need
that that's the oversight committee, so we
Okay.
can look at all those items.
Okay.
So are we gonna make a motion to, it shouldn't be a motion to have paragraph E to match?
It's probably, so the first item under 4, or actually, what is that, 5, I guess, was just to really describe what the duties are a little bit, just to refresh everyone's memory. So it's probably not an action item. As John's amended language really comes into play in item 6, when we talk about the committees, because if you look at, we didn't paginate this, but the page that breaks it down, you'll see some working titles of committees that match each one of those duties. So that, I think, Mr. Chair, you were going to talk about that in one was 6A. And that probably, if we wanted to do something formal, that would be the place to do it.
So we will move on and we'll go to section. What's that?
You still find C, are you gonna talk about it? Oh, sure.
Okay, so here are a list of submissions by the HRC Commission. So this is not a full list, but this is a list that has a lot of the items that are being talked about today. So, I think if you look at what's happening on the national level, there's lots of things that have brought us to this point. And so a lot of these things are items that would most likely help the city of Troy to make sure that we don't fall into the same pitfalls that other cities are falling into. So before I hand this out, I will hand out another document.
Can I ask where this list came from? Or how you
I
guys
don't have
this
this
list?
list, so this must have been in the packet that we all received.
It says initiatives submitted by us. On the top of it.
Right.
This was the list that got received by several of the members. It was not, everybody has not contributed yet.
Okay.
But this is what we have received as of a couple of days ago.
But we'll have time to get everybody else's. put in here too, yeah.
Yeah, so we will take on that, everything that you almost have. And then we'll just talk about it. But this is just a starting list. The additional document we passed out is a document that I wrote as an overview. So you all can get a chance to see this. So before we get into the initiatives, what I'd like to do is just take a little bit of time going through this document. So the name of it is the discussion resolutions of dismantling systematic racism impacting the Black electorate. So this document pretty much talks about how we as a city can change a lot of different things to make our city better for everyone, not just a certain group of people. And it's not all about race. It's about essentially equality for everyone that lives in this city that is under the tax bracket of our taxpayers. So I would like you to spend some time to go through it. The thing that is probably disturbing to some, but I hope that most people find this a very good guide to really understand where America is at this point. So when you look at what's happening in our world, a lot of it is stemming from a lot of the past issues that we've had from 400 years ago. So what I try to do is to create a document that would speak to why people are upset, why people are going out and protesting and rioting, and why this group is even formed. And so I think this is only meant to be an educational piece, so please read it and have that thought in mind. So there's lots of information there. Then additionally, if you look to page 5 or 7, so you'll see that there are topics for Troy as a city government. There's things that we as a committee should probably be taking a look at. These things looked at, or these thoughts that were put on this list pretty much talk about all aspects of the finances, and talks about all the aspects of how our streets are named and what the names for our buildings are and those type of things. So not that alone is going to change anything, but I think that's part of the discussion for our city. Then as you go down to law enforcement, there's a lot of thought process on how we can work with the law enforcement to make sure that we're not falling into the traps that are happening in other cities. So like if you look at George Floyd, there was an officer that had his knee on his neck and he died basically because of that. So there's another gentleman that passed away because he was shot up by ketamine. So there's lots of things that we need to discuss for our city to make sure we don't fall into that same pattern that is happening and playing out everywhere else. So there's lots of information on here. This is just a starting point. And I know that there's going to be things that may want to be, discussed. There's things that might want to be thrown out. And I'm fine with that because it's hard to prove. And I think we should all have a say in it. So, again, the point was to kind of pull in things that were happening around the country. And these items that I've gone through and added are things that are very heavy on other city commission lists right now. So the other items on here would be talking about education. Things that we do with our tax dollars that can help our city and help all the children. If you're going to help change the city, it starts with the kids. And so I thought that was a very good piece to add in there. Let's see. From an educational standpoint, it goes from talking about a budget, and it goes through talking about what are the history books that are being used in schools, how is that information being presented to children, and more importantly, how is the Civil War being explained to our children, and what does that look like? And then it's looking at our ethnicity as a city, our goals to having teachers and people in those positions that match the ethnicity of the city. So there's lots of information in there. I think that we can take a look at it on our next meeting. We can come back and talk through these items. I know it's a lot to take in during this one. There's also a list of social, there's a list on voting, and we can touch on healthcare and section on for wellness. So there's lots of information. Yeah, I have mine. Not the original. So this is a lot to take in, and this is not meant to be, offensive in any way. This is just to be a supportive document that we use as a guide to try and help solicit real feedback for things that we really need to discuss and get out on the table. So, the initiative submissions by HRC Commission have a lot of these things that are just documented in here. So the documents that I did receive after our last meeting, I tried to add those in. So they're all accounted for, and so we will go through these as subcommittees. So we'll go through and take a long time. And not Detroit's. I mean, I think Detroit's a little bit. So we love this community, so we just want to make sure that we don't fall into these other issues that are happening in our city. You're absolutely welcome. Any questions on the document that was handed out or the initiative by submission? We should probably look at these. Talk maybe a little bit about it. Sure.
I'm looking at these committees up here, these things seem to maybe fit into some of those different categories.
They absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Marvin, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around this document. This is, you created this yourself and did the this is your research.
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
I see that you pulled some, but I didn't know if there's a collective group or if it's your thoughts right now.
So I try to really dive into what's happening in America. I'm trying to look at what they're talking about, what they're doing, what a lot of the nonprofits are doing to help support the efforts of trying to erase our past. And so this document was certainly written by me. I did a ton of research just trying to figure out how we as a city could avoid all of those pitfalls that are happening. So I hope that the tone is taken that way. But yes, I do.
That's okay. I appreciate your work and I'm anxious to read it. And I'm glad you're talking right up front about dismantling systems of racism, because if we don't go back to that, I don't
Exactly.
see
it can't go forward.
We're not gonna spin our wheels.
Right,
Right.
and so I think a lot of the discussion about trying to break that down and what that is exactly. Just the Reader's Digest view of this is basically, when you look at social, you look at financial, you look at educational, and you look at policing. I think those are the things that we really need to tackle, and we need to have a very honest conversation about it. So we'll get to the nitty-gritty. That can help our community. Any other questions about the document?
I'm anxious to read it and thank you for your work.
You're absolutely right.
I think it'll be a helpful document to do this.
All right. All right, so committee participation exercise. Okay, so now we're going to talk about formation of committees. So there are 4 sections on the wall, and we propose subcommittees. We as a group can be on 1, we can be on 4, if that's possible. So we have some dots here, and actually that was like,
You received 10 dots, I already showed. So you will have to distribute dots on 4 committees. So 4 that will go with the committee you want to serve the most. 3, the second choice committee. 2 dots, the committee, and 1 that will go to the committee you want to serve the most. So when you place all the dots on the paper, and after the meeting ends, I'll count those, Bobby can move, and then I'll, with Marvin, Mr. Chairman, I'll count the dots and then we will let you know how those were distributed and then which committees will be serving. There might be some changes, maybe, I don't know how the list will be distributed, so it depends how many people will be interested in each committee. But first we need to see what committees you want to serve. And we can go from there.
And Margaret, say go.
Yeah,
I'll wait.
Mr. Chair, just to let everybody know, you see 4 committees up there. There are actually 5 duties. That 5th duty is the committee of the whole, which is the complaint duty, if you will, that already full commission we felt like.
I think as long as you've got your mask on.
Come on, Jordan, let's go to the purpose.
Doesn't make any difference. I gotta put them up underneath.
I'll be there.
All right. Maybe it's the part. We're doing. Oh, damn it. I know.
Hey, how are you? Good. Congratulations. Tell Rachel, I'm on Facebook anymore, so I don't know anything about it. Tell Rachel, I said congrats. Thank you. Ah.
What's that? $900,000 cut. Probably, I mean, $900,000. And then we don't, obviously, we don't know how much local yet. I'm assuming that what we're already collecting on the other income will be.
Education, because you know, I'm an educator, so right.
And then I went for the community.
Yeah, I did too.
And then the next one was the intern.
Turn.
And then last week,
Just because okay.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It was approved.
Yeah. So, look at this. It's like we should
When it's approved. Yes.
I was hoping to do a prayer myself.
I know, yeah, that would have been nice.
Yeah, but not everybody.
I don't,
Can't.
August 3rd.
Right.
We have a special meeting August 3rd. So.
But
There's a whole bunch of people that should.
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 That should be.
No.
You know, Jeff Price. I said, you know, Jeff Price has got that down. Mr. Cummings.
I mean, no, she called.
Make sure you put the
Called
right
and
link.
asked him to do. I think
Said he didn't do that one.
it was very few.
Oh.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I just like it to be on the.
It's fair.
Well, I mean, it doesn't. It
Mayor's
loses
That's what a lot
legitimacy.
of people. That don't wanna get here.
Oh.
Was that for the rec league?
They don't know that it's. So it probably does look good.
All right, so we have our groups. I guess already set. We set up your calculation and then we'll discuss that next meeting. Is that correct?
No, but
Yes.
give me a little. Give
So
me
by
my
next
numbers
meeting,
on
we
here.
should all
So
know our
give me a
assignments and then
Yes.
We'll get
we
together.
can set up a meeting. So that meeting, as
I have
he
a lot of
said,
history.
I looked at
We
these guidelines.
Oh, sorry.
Just highlight it. So
5 days ahead. So we'll have to 5 days ahead. So hopefully our next meeting is August 6th. So we can have our first subcommittee meeting by start. Well, doesn't have
August 6th, but we'll probably
6:30?
start on the 13th.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes. Here's 6:30. And the 13th of August will be the first day for the subcommittees. Five days. So that's, anything else?
We'll meet on August 6th.
Do you think it's the
Start with
subcommittee
the
meeting at the same time, or they're gonna meet individually?
No,
August
I would
13th.
hope that the subcommittee would meet at a different time, that way if anybody else would like to be a cross member, and, you know, attend more than one committee, I would hope that, they make that as well.
So to keep it going, once Salome tabulates all of these, we will reach out with what would appear to be, just based on the number of dots per committee, who might want to be on which committee, and then send it out as a draft to everybody and ask for your input, make sure that we got it right. And at that point, if you have a second choice that you really want to be on two, and this is the second one you want to be on, please give us feedback as quickly as you can. And then, we can do whatever these or make adjustments.
Those meetings, do they have to be scheduled through the office, or can we meet as a subcommittee as we would like to? Where does that have to be?
Let me double check with our law director. We meet as a council, we meet as three members out of 9, and they have to be advertised. I don't know how formal it has to be. And Grant would have to speak out. But I'll let you know when we send out an email to you.
Thank you. I'd like to go to any meetings that I can possibly. You know, if that's on Zoom, I would be fine with that as well. Okay, so I'd like to move to section 7. So we'd like to discuss the committee meetings. So our goal on each of the committees, which is to, as we said earlier, to make sure that we're discussing topics that are, I guess, close to what the subheadings are there. And then we all should be looking to create a list of what those items are. So based on the committee that you have elected to join, please take a note. Please make sure that by the next meeting you have a list of things that you would like to discuss.
So basically using the list that document kind of we put forward, and we take your document, we look at those things, and kind of categorize those.
Are you envisioning each committee having a report at the meeting, or each meeting have one committee have a report in an engaging conversation?
I think that each committee needs to have one report, and then we get.
So we'll discuss every committee's report.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there anyone opposed to that? It will make our meetings a lot longer, but I think it's all important. That's what we're on.
And I would suspect there are gonna be times when kind of rises star of the
Yes.
meeting.
So we'll need a secretary for each meeting.
Not all things.
Marvin, I'm just, I'm a process type, I'm trying to think through this. Would it be helpful for this group to have some discussions, and as things rise to the top, we assign them to the committees? My fear is that a committee, because they are, Sonia was saying how closely related some of these are.
Okay.
We might have two committees working on a similar thing, and there might be a part of something I think we might want both committees to look at, but just to stay in communication, I'm wondering if it'd be better for the larger group to sort out the things and then filter those down to the committee. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm
you're
saying?
saying? Yeah, that, I guess, based on the report that we get from the committee, we pair those reports up with all the other reports, right? And then we look at what the common denominators are, and we decide if it should be on committee A or committee B.
Okay, that works for me.
So I think that's probably the way to do it.
That's fine. I was just trying to picture it. That works. Yeah.
You got something?
It's kind of a top-down plus bottom-up. Both things going on at once.
Yeah.
So at least initially, Stephanie brought up that the initiatives, each committee is going to kind of look at their own initiatives. I think the expectation would be, at least it was with ATP, that the first report is, okay, these are the kind of things that we want to do. And that's where this whole group can see everybody's, and then you'll identify those conflicts or overlaps.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that wraps up section 6. Okay, so the format for future meetings. We will hopefully have a presentation for each of our meetings. You can all decide on what that presentation has within it, but I'm hoping that it can be from our subcommittees. And I'm also hoping that based on the conversations that the subcommittees have, that we can look to bring in some outside help. I'm not sure what the backgrounds are for each person here, but I think it would be very helpful for us to identify people that work within the city, people that live in our community, that we can discuss these items with, and maybe have come into a meeting and discuss some options. So, so for the presentation, let's get to our next meeting first, and then we can decide on how we would like to format that based on your feedback. But I really think it will be very needed to bring in some outside help.
It's beneficial as well as people take the time out of the day to come and support and learn, that we create some type of a two-way relationship and allow them to, at some point, to be able to speak. So we're relevant to what's going on in our community. That'll keep us nice and checked and balanced. So I'd like to incorporate that in as well.
So I guess we don't have any committee reports at this moment. So we'll add that to our agenda for our next meeting. So is there any other item that you would like to discuss or add to that? Yes.
I just wanted to add something really quick. So at one point, black men and black women didn't have the rights as whites do in this country. They were forced to be segregated, told they weren't worthy enough to drink the same water as whites. Yet they were labeled free. It took brave men and women to organize and stand against the hate and evil in this country. Even though they knew they would be arrested, beaten, harassed, in a lot of cases killed. One of those fearless people that stood against the status quo was a man from Troy, Alabama. He organized sit-ins and protests, marched, and spoke with the king, the youngest, to speak on the March for Washington at the age of 23. He most famously organized, he got in what he would call good trouble. This man was John Lewis. He most famously organized the Selma to Montgomery March. He was met by white supremacists and police officers. They beat him so badly that his skull was cracked. But that march for true freedom and the rights to vote for all Americans did more than he could ever dream of. And that was inspired generations of young and old people to stand up against racism in our country that still goes on today. Many good people live in this world, but very few are giants that walk among us. John Lewis was undoubtedly a giant that will now live in our memories, stories, and history books. We thank you, John Lewis, for your fight in equality, and may you rest in peace. And may I ask for the commission to have a moment of silence for John Lewis. Thank you.
Is there any other item that someone would like to bring up before we conclude our meeting? Okay, well, so that was a very good note to end on. And my quote for ending today from John Lewis. Never give up, and never give in, and never become hostile. It is too big a burden to bear. So I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead and a great next week. I look forward to meeting with you all. So thank you for coming. Yes, we need to move to adjourn.
Second. Aye.
I know I did too.
Before we leave, there's
Like-
another, and I learned that the other also made, the people that came, if you have something to say, that's your time. So, well, oh, we gotta change.
She did what? Okay.
You ever go to Troy Library?
Not often, but
Okay, I live right over there. I'm right on the corner, that side of the big blue house. Only house there.
okay.
The big blue